Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a live update as we have some new model guidance ahead. And it looks like we're going to have probably at least 3 chase days coming up over the next week. Definitely need to watch out for that sleeper chase on March 12th. That's going to be like eastern Oklahoma down into central Texas. That's a lead system that's going to come out. That lead system might even slow down moisture return just a little bit for the March 14 system, but we do have a new large warm sector that's going to be opening up from Texas all the way up to Wisconsin. That's a very large warm sector. Usually when you get these big setups like this, these big high amplitude mid-latitude cyclones, usually it means that you're going to have more of a bimodal type of a severe weather event. That means you get a cluster of tornado reports up along the surface low. That would be up near like Iowa, Missouri area. And then you get a cluster just a little bit further to the south. And the Storm Prediction Center has that very large risk area, Texas all the way up to eastern Iowa. And I'm going to be breaking this down live. We are gearing up our science mission right now, folks. Our science mission's going big this year. You're going to see all of this play out in real time as well. You're going to see a 3-dimensional animation of our sensors going around inside of the rocket. We're going to have a real-time estimate of tornado intensity with these rockets, and live update on multiple storm chases ahead from Team Dominator headquarters. We were taking on water last night as we were working on the air compressor system of the Dominator 3. We're putting in a dryer on the back because that's why we got stranded so many times during this fall and even last spring. So that is the Friday risk area from the Storm Prediction Center. This is Saturday, March 15. And I do think that there's also going to be a sleeper event. We'll call it a sleeper event right now on March 12th. But I'm going to be breaking all this down for you right now, folks. That's what we do here. Starting off with with Wednesday. So this is going to feature a dry line that is going to march all the way east to near I-35. And the GFS model doesn't have quite as much moisture making it up into southeastern Oklahoma, but has mid-60s dew points down into portions of Texas. That includes the Texas Hill Country down here. And looks like we could get supercell storms that develop across this environment by late afternoon into the evening hours. There you can see that cluster of storms that develop. Right now, it looks like these are going to be largely hail-producing storms, but wouldn't be surprised if we do get a tornado or two on Wednesday because of this low-level jet. You can see about a 30-knot southwesterly low-level jet, and that could provide just a little bit of low-level wind shear necessary to get some tornado potential. So keep an eye on that. But there you can see the instability, 0 to 3 kilometer energy helicity index. This basically shows you where the surface-based instability is overlapped with low-level wind shear. In this case, 0 to 3 kilometer storm relative helicity, and obviously is picking up on that greater wind shear a little bit further south down into Texas, down into central Texas. Looks like there could be a bit of a capping inversion down there. You can see in the lower portion of that. It could be just a little bit of a capping inversion further south, but it does look marginally supportive of a tornado threat. The photograph looking up in the upper right. You do have some directional shear in the lowest levels of the atmosphere, but it looks like further south could get just a little bit more of some capping down there, capping inversion. Looking at the GFS ensemble spread now for the bomb cyclone coming up on Friday. Looks like we're going to be chasing Wednesday, possibly northeastern Texas, maybe down into the Texas Hill Country. And then it looks like on Thursday we'll be heading up to that chase on Friday. And this is when the bomb cyclone develops. There you can see the GFS ensemble spread of the surface lows of each individual ensemble member. That's the ensemble mean you see there, that 974 millibars by midday on Friday, March 14. That's that big risk area that stretches from Texas all the way up to Wisconsin. And just ahead of this bomb cyclone, that's the rate at which it intensifies. We call it a Colorado low because it comes out of eastern Colorado, coming up toward the upper Midwest. And usually with setups like this, you have a bimodal distribution. You have a cluster of severe weather further north. Just ahead of a surface low track like this, that'll probably set up from Iowa into portions of northern Missouri. And I think that could be more of a daytime arc of supercells that lift up from eastern Nebraska up into portions of Iowa as well. And there you can see that 973 millibar average low. Some of those are deeper, so I wouldn't be surprised if we get into the 960s with that setup. And this is the GFS ensemble, the 12Z GFS ensemble. Let's see what it has for dew points. Dew points in the ensemble mean sense, not quite as favorable further north, but you only need about mid-50s dew points that far north to get big-time severe weather. And look at the operational GFS, and especially look where that 60-degree isodrosotherm sets up. It makes it all the way up to the St. Louis area now in the latest 12Z model, so it's trending up in the moisture return. But the day before, on March 12th, you have some decent moisture that heads up into eastern Texas. This is that lead system that we've been talking about. Here you can see that lead trough, 500 millibar trough here. This is going to have some northerlies on the back side of it, and that could slow down the moisture return for our bigger trough, which is going to be coming out on Friday. There you can see that big ski jump trough ejection. Strong flow rounding the base of the trough, still deepening as it moves across the southwestern U.S. And then we have trough ejection there on Friday. And look at that vortmax intensify. We've got 120 knot, 500 millibar jet streak rounding the base of this trough, still amplifying at this time. And it even has a negative tilt. These negatively tilted troughs are very potent. They lead to very large warm sectors. This is a high amplitude trough as well. And watch what this does to the low level jet. This is your wind 1 kilometer above the ground that causes supercell storms to tighten up in the low levels into tornado producing storms. And you've got a 60 plus knot low level jet out here. If you have a low level jet of about 30 knots, that's more than sufficient in most setups to generate low level wind shear sufficient for tornadoes. But with these very kinematically intense, powerful mid-latitude cyclones, you get a lot of your wind shear from speed shear in the warm sector. So when you get a 70 knot low level jet like this, over top those surface winds that are a little bit weaker at about 20 knots, that usually will give you some big time tornado potential. And we have a very large warm sector as well. Look at this warm sector at 21Z. This is 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Basically, this shows you where you have sufficient surface-based instability for supercell storms, and it stretches from Louisiana and Mississippi all the way up to portions of Minnesota and Wisconsin. And that is by 4 p.m. And then look at, it looks like you get a little bit of an uptick in the instability and wind shear near sunset and after sunset a little bit further south. That could be southeastern Missouri into southern Illinois. I think we're probably going to see a secondary mode here of tornado potential, and that could be after dark. You'll likely have a daytime threat with an arc of supercells moving from central into eastern Iowa, maybe even up into Wisconsin. We might even have tornado potential that night up into the western upper peninsula of Michigan with that severe weather lifting that far north. But you can definitely see the nocturnal mode setting up here near the Ohio River Valley up into eastern Illinois, western Indiana. And I think we're going to have an arc of supercells that moves through Iowa associated with that strong surface low, and may even have a third mode further south down across the mid-south. But basically, there's a ton of dry air that has been dominating the southeastern U.S. over the last couple of years, and that's why the eastward push of these severe weather events has been just a little bit muted. But in this case, we have this secondary vortmax that comes around the base of the trough, setting the stage for some potentially significant severe weather across the Mid-South. That would be Mississippi, Alabama here on the 15th next Saturday. You can see this little jet streak that comes out, rounds the base of the trough, and then moves across portions of the Mid-South next Saturday. That excites a low-level jet, 50-plus knot low-level jet from Mississippi, Alabama, up into Tennessee on the 15th. So notice how it even intensifies as you go from about midday 1 p.m. To about 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time. It intensifies even further down there across the Mid-South. I do think we're going to have 2 days of severe weather. Friday, maybe playing the arc of Iowa into portions of Wisconsin, Illinois during the daylight hours, drop down to cover the nocturnal mode across southern Illinois, southeastern Missouri, and then we may drop south on the 15th to work this threat down into Mississippi and Alabama on Saturday. And you can definitely see the latest GFS model really blossoms the 0 to 3 kilometer energy helicity index down there next Saturday. And this is also an event to watch. But notice how the eastward side of this is a little bit muted, especially as you go from 0Z to 3Z. You're not increasing with time here on the 15th. And so that's why I'm not as confident on this threat across the Mid-South on the 15th, just because of the compression of the warm sector that happens down there. And there might be a big squall line with that lead system that could limit that secondary vortex that rounds the base of that trough. But right now, of course, PDS tornado soundings all over the place. Look at that low-level jet up on the upper right portion of the screen. Let me slide this down just a bit. And look at that low-level, look at that photograph right there, folks. Let me make sure my Epic Pen is squared up on this. That is a major hook-shaped photograph in the upper right portion of your screen. You can see a 60-knot southerly low-level jet. That's your 1 kilometer wind. That's over top about an 18-knot surface wind. And that creates about 40 knots of bulk shear between your surface wind and 1 kilometer wind right there. That's tons of low-level wind shear. Southwest and northeast storm motion at 60 knots. That happens a lot during the spring, driven by these very strong winds aloft. You got about 110-knot mid-level jet streak rounding the base of the trough. A little weaker capping inversion. Looks pretty moist and cloud, dominated by clouds right now on this sounding. So we got a lot of time between now and Saturday, of course. No need to panic. Don't reach out to your local weatherman freaking out about these bright colors yet. Still a lot of time. We use trough shape when we forecast here at Team Dominator, and naturally we forecast the ceilings for these events. A lot of worst case scenarios, because that's what gets the Dominator on the road chasing these storms. And I would say a worst case scenario for Friday would be an arc of supercells that rockets through Iowa, potentially all the way to the Mississippi River and maybe up into Wisconsin Friday afternoon into evening, and then a nocturnal mode of tornadoes happening down a little bit further south, central Missouri up into Illinois, maybe down to the Ohio River, and then maybe a morning threat could also develop further south, but then setting the stage for Friday afternoon, Mississippi and Alabama. This secondary vort that pivots around the base of that trough, that's how we need to watch out for. You can see it here with a lot of flow on the backside. This westerly flow that goes over the Mexico plateau that picks up mid-level dry air and will slingshot it over that moisture, and those are the basics of instability. And usually the more significant outbreaks happen when you bring aspects of the Great Plains further east across the central and eastern U.S. That includes elevated mix layers for events like this. EMLs, elevated mix layers, we call them. The evolution of those elevated mix layers are very important to determine intensity and location of severe weather. And look at that down in the Gulf of Mexico. Big time dew points down there into the central and western Gulf up into the 70s. And that's going to pump northward across the Mississippi River Valley. These decent dew points down in the south are interesting. You've got better dew points and instability down there, but you have a little weaker low-level jet on Friday. Most of the favorable kinematics lift north of that deeper moisture, and that lead system on March 12th could slow down that moisture transport just a little bit on Friday's system. Blizzard conditions dominating the cold side. Look at the blizzard conditions that are just going to be dominating out there. The Great Plains, Northern Plains, Dakotas, North Dakota, South Dakota. Just to the east, Rapid City is going to get blizzard conditions from this. You're going to see those red boxes here across the cold side of this system. And you can see those isobars really tightly packed up there on the cold side of this system. 974 low, just past its peak. It reaches its peak as it rounds the base, moving through Kansas and Nebraska midday on Friday. Look at the blizzard conditions on the backside. Western Dakotas, eastern Wyoming, down into northeastern Colorado. Big blizzard conditions are going to be the story up there. And then to the south of that, rapidly ejecting dry line, and behind the dry line, you're going to have that wildfire potential with those dew points dropping down into the teens and single digits across the southern high plains. A cold front will be surging south through the central high plains, So you'll likely have this cold front just bottoming south, likely have a haboob on it there in the southern high plains. Wildfire danger is going to be quite high across the southern high plains, driven by these 40-knot winds coming around the south side of that bomb cyclone across the southern high plains. Extreme wildfire danger down here. Eastern New Mexico, Texas Panhandle, and also into western Oklahoma, western into central Oklahoma. You're definitely going to have some wildfire danger on that. But a sharp dry line pushing off to the east. See how this moisture is a little bit limited as it lifts to the northward? That's because of that lead system on March 12th. But the models are trending toward a little bit greater moisture by 4 to 7 p.m. You do get that 60-degree dew point lifting all the way up to the St. Louis area. Kansas City, I think you're going to be east of the more significant severe weather threat just because this dry line is going to punch east. But I wouldn't be surprised to even see wildfire danger, including Kansas City and Omaha, back behind this dry line when you get those big winds coming in. Here's your front surging south as well. Your front surges south. Thank you guys for dominating that like button here. Just a meteorological overview of the intense severe weather that is going to accompany this bomb cyclone as it lifts out of Colorado through the Central Plains. We'll likely see an arc of supercell storms that will move very rapidly. So look at the surface low here in central Nebraska, 971 millibar surface low. Blizzard conditions, western Nebraska, western South Dakota, northeastern Colorado. And you can already see the hint at an arc of supercells developing just ahead of that surface low near the warm front, southeastern Nebraska, down into southwestern Iowa and western Missouri. And it blossoms after 4 p.m., lifting up through eastern Iowa up into even southwestern Wisconsin, right along that warm frontal zone. So I think there's going to be an arc of supercells that develop during the daytime hours, maybe central Iowa. The exact location we'll know between now and then, of course, by now and Friday when the short-range models, mid to short-range models start to grasp onto this. And then it looks like a nighttime mode just to the south of this. We might have those closely, a little bit of the two modes of a bimodal setup, a little tightly packed here. And I expect that nighttime mode from about 7 to 10 p.m. to midnight to develop down a little further south, central southern Illinois, maybe southeastern Missouri. Not sure if that southern mode is going to come out of the deep south, but notice how the low-level jet lifts off to the north, basically from the Ohio River Valley, central Mississippi River Valley, northward across the southern Great Lakes region. That's where you get your more favorable kinematics with that surface low lifting off to the northeast. But then on the 15th, you get this reinvigoration of the low-level jet, but confidence is a little bit lower in this severe weather threat. We've had a lot of stubborn, dry air over the southeastern U.S. that limits the eastward push of that severe weather. But we're gearing up our science mission in a big way, and I'm about to post a little test animation of the back end of the probe tracking system. Doing great, everybody. Hope you're doing good as well. Curtis is out working on the doors today for the Dominator 3. If you can't open and close the door system of the Dominator 3, you got big problems. But first, he fixed the air system. So we got the new dryer in the back of the Dominator 3 now. That will evacuate some of the water that is in the airbag system. And we also have our new live streaming setup, multi-camera setup coming this year. And we are going to show that science mission happening in real time. You're going to be able to see a real-time animation in 3 dimensions of sensors going around inside of the tornado. And you'll also be able to have an estimate of tornado intensity in real time from the Dominator, as we are going to be peppering these tornadoes, hopefully with dozens of sensors. And you'll be able to get a wind measurement inside of the tornado. Definitely give a follow to Will Clay 25. Will Clay on here. He's got some crazy videos. He's on TikTok as well. But he is just an extreme engineer. Worked for SpaceX for a while. And he is helping us design real-time displays. He's designing those sensors, receivers as well, and the Stinger camera. So you're going to be able to basically have a rear view of the Dominator intercepting tornadoes, launching rockets into the tornado at real time. And we're also going to have drone views as well of all of this happening. So definitely give us a follow. Let everybody know, let all your friends know what's going to be happening with our live stream this year, because we are all in on this science mission in 2025. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this live update. Here are the Storm Prediction Center risk areas, 15% risk areas now. Really what to focus on is that sleeper setup on Wednesday, southeast Oklahoma, northeast Texas, probably more hail producers, and then a very large warm sector, Texas, Louisiana, all the way up to eastern Iowa, surface low. Probably will be more of a bimodal, even a trimodal setup, but I could see like up near the surface low happening during the daytime, maybe a nighttime setup a little bit further to the south of that. So thanks everybody for tuning in to this live update. Thank you for dominating that like button as you do. And we're very excited to show you all of this in real time. This extreme science mission is basically going to be just like the movie Twister, but in real time. Thank you everybody for tuning in to this live update. Thank you Team Dominator members for making all of this possible. Never stop chasing.